Today we are talking about what sellers need to know in 2025 when selling their house. Um, we want to say thank you, first of all, to everyone joining us and all of our new subscribers. Um, our goal here is to answer your questions, so please comment and let us know what topics you're interested in and specific questions if you have any. Um, yeah.
Thanks, Ravina. She's Ravina Turnage, branch manager in our Quartzsite branch at Long River Realty. Tim Holley is the broker and owner at Long River Realty, and my name is jaredsrail, and I am a realtor and appraiser. And you know, like Ravina said, we're going to talk about selling your home and try to hopefully answer some questions about the process of selling a home. Um, Tim, what are your thoughts currently on the housing market?
That the housing market still it's a strong market. Um, and I've always said this: if they're priced right, they're half sold. So buyers are still buying, sellers are still selling. The sellers definitely have to take a look and listen to the market data. The data is going to determine what values are, what appraisals will come in at, and a long times that the house could be the most beautiful house in the world, but if you have it overpriced, sometimes the sellers, the agents will come in and say, "Look, we've run everything, we've done the comps, we're professionals, we're in the industry. This is the value of the home." And then the sellers say, "Well, I need this much out of it," and that's when my heart sort of drops.
Mhm.
And because that we need this much out of it is never less than what we show market value to be. So the sellers have to really listen close to their agents, and the sellers can even say, I could call the next realtor and tell them I want this price and they'll give it to me. And it's like, well, yeah, probably there's enough starving agents out there that are willing to take whatever somebody's asking for. But really, who's that the benefit to? Is that the benefit to an agent saying, "Oh, I got this listing"? Is it a benefit to the seller? "Oh, I got the listing price I wanted." Or does it hurt everybody else involved when there's houses sitting out there way above value? And that's the nice thing with Jared being a part of the Long River Realty team. He does many classes, and he talks about strategies and listings and where there should be at. And so I think sometimes the sellers can hurt themselves and get in their own ways by saying, "No, I don't care what the data says. This is how much I want."
Yeah, I think Tim, it's important to look at first look at the data, look at the comps, see what your comps are showing, and for people who let's try to take it down a little bit. What's a comp, right? A comp is a house that's sold that's similar to yours, as well as other houses that are listed for sale that are similar to yours. Those are competing properties, or as we like to call them, comps. And it's important to look at the comp data and see what people are actually selling their houses for, not just what they're listing it for. And then when you're trying to determine a list price, then also look at the data that shows how much your home's selling for as a percentage of their list price. In other words, if your house is showing comps of $500,000 and the sale to list ratio shows houses are selling for 99% of their list price, you may not want to list for 500 if you think it's worth 500. You may want to start a little bit higher to allow for some of that negotiating room. All part of the tactics of how an agent wants to do it, right?
Yeah, and I see that, but there's sometimes when they just go way over, to say this is the value. Well, let's add $50,000 onto that. That's not good for anybody at that point.
Yeah.
You really got to look, and this is what I come down to, and this is what I say to people: Do you want to list your home, or do you want to sell your home? And obviously, we want to get you the most money possible. We want to make the transaction as easy as possible. But there has to be a point where you draw a line and say, okay, this is reality. This is the dream. We have to come in at the right spot, or this house could just sit here forever. And Jared, you or Ravina, you can talk about what happens in busy moving markets if a house sits on too long versus the seasonal markets on time on market on houses.
Yeah, so the seasonal market is in Quartzsite and in our area, Salome, Ehrenberg, Baus. Um, we have our seasonal buyers that come down. We have 6 months of selling basically, which is where we do 2/3 of our business, right? And so if a seller lists at the end of the season, then they are encouraged to keep it going through the next season so that it's guaranteed to sell, even possibly throughout the summer, right?
Yeah, and
Because
it's very smart to do.
right, because buyers are buying during the summer. Those new seasonal, I can't think of the word, snowbirds that come down their first time, and they're like go away, right? They leave at the end of the season, and then they're during the summer they're like, you know what? I think I want to buy a Quartzsite, so let's get our place before we go down there again this winter, right? And so we do sales during the summer. So it is a myth that, you know, properties don't sell in Quartzsite during the summer.
Yeah.
So, but that needs to be taken into consideration when we're looking at days on market in these areas, right?
Yeah, and like you said, Tim, in faster moving markets, a buyer sees a property that's been sitting on the market for an extended period of time. They start thinking, what's wrong with it? And I can get a good deal and I can lowball, right? I can
Mm.
offer way below what they're asking because of how long it's been on the market. Um, and Going back a little bit on the list price and sale to list ratio, you talked about, let's list a house for 550. You know, there's that's where that sale to list ratio stuff comes in, meaning a percentage of your list price is what most houses are selling for. You go to 10% over the list price in a market that expects 2 to 3, and you just won't see any offers at all, or you won't see any activity. Um, for a buyer, you know, I encourage buyers to still go look at the stuff that's overpriced. We can offer what we think it's worth, but that can be a problem if you're the seller, creating a negative stigma around your property. But again, that depends on the market. Like you said, Quartzsite is different than Havasu. Havasu is going to be different than Kingman. Kingman's going to be different than Bullhead City or wherever our listeners are located. Every market has its own data that you should be looking at, and your local professional should be able to help work you through that data.
Yeah, and so people still need to understand. Yeah, you may want this much because I've had some in the past, nothing lately, but I had them in the past to where someone says, "Well, I need to get this much for my house because I want to retire and I want to move here and pay cash for a house and I need to have extra money in my pocket, so I need to get this much out of this house." And you're like, but it's not a reality. That's not going to happen. Listen to me. Here's the numbers. Let's lay out. Let's talk about it. I want you to get the most you can. But so what we need on educating sellers, and that's what we're doing today, is sellers, you really need to listen to the professionals. They do work off commissions. They want to get you the highest price possible, but they don't want to do damage to you. And in a way, listing a house for way over the value is doing damage to you and damage to the house. And I had one that listed it above, and I said, look, we're not, we can watch all the market data. We can watch algorithms. We can see who's looking at what, who's not looking at what. And when you get it way too above to what people think and value are, they won't even bother coming looking at it, or they won't even bother making an offer. I had one that did that, and I said, look, I want to show you that this isn't going to happen. And after a month, and we marketed, we did nothing to taint anything. We put our 100% into it with no results. And we called the gentleman and said, hey, we got to sit down and talk about this, because, it's like us just putting $100 bills inside of an ashtray and lighting it and burning it. And he says, well, I really thought people wanted the house, they would just call and make offers. And I'm like, no, we explained that in the very beginning. You have to be in the ballpark for people to even want to look at it. Even, nobody wants to waste nobody's time. And the buyer's time is just as valuable as the seller's time.
Yeah. Sometimes when a property sits on the market too, everybody's out there looking at stuff on the internet, right? And you start seeing the same house over and over and over, and then it becomes kind of I'm just going to skip that one. I've seen it 100 times, even though it might be a great house. Initially, it may have been, it's a great house, but it's overpriced. And then after a while of being on the market, when the price finally comes down to a more reasonable price, they might be just skipping over it because they've seen it 100 times, and that's something you want to avoid too. And again, that's going to depend on the area where the house is located. But
Yeah, and if you don't have something that stands out in that house and that's been over there and they've seen it 100 times, even if you lower the price, all they're going to have in their head is, I've seen that house 100 times. They might not remember that one picture that really stood out that would make it a house they may want to buy. So sellers and sellers agents, if you get in that situation, you're finally going to get the house aligned with the right price. Change around your pictures, get new pictures, change your marketing verbiage. It's sort of like doing a rehab on a house. When you're going to remodel it, if you're lowering your price way down, remodel your listing, get the pictures switched around, get the verbiage switched around, freshen it up.
Yeah. It's good
Rovena,
advice.
I think this would be kind of a good topic for you. But when a seller has a listing and they're living in the property, and somebody has made an appointment and is going to be coming over to show it, what should they do before they leave the house? If your agent is not coming to let them in, it's another agent. What would be things that you might think about doing before leaving the house to make it ready for a showing?
Opening blinds, turning on all the lights, making sure it's immaculate, basically.
Follow your husband around the house, flush the toilet, put the lid down before he leaves.
Oh, please, please,
I've
please.
seen that one. I walked in as a buyer's agent. I'm like, oh my God, come on, people.
I would say think of yourself as the buyer viewing your home. What do you want to see if you're out house hunting? Just put yourself in the buyer's shoes.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the reason I brought it up and is because a lot of people don't realize that, hey, they're scheduled a showing, they're coming over with their agent, right? So I'm just gonna lock up and leave. Well, they may have their agent on a list of 10 houses to see. They're walking in that house together. The agent that is showing the house may not have time to walk through the house and turn on the lights and open the blinds and make it look amazing, and they don't necessarily have to. So it is something for sellers to think about. If the house looks light and bright with the blinds open, maybe you want to show that natural light. Maybe you want to think about those things before you leave the house, as opposed to just running out the door.
Exactly.
Because the agent that's coming to show it, if they show up right with them at the same time, they're not going to be able to do any of those things.
Yeah, they will have time.
And the other thing that's important too, because Arizona gets a tad bit warm come towards the end of July and August and 1st of September. If it's a vacant house, obviously I think the listing agent should do everything possible to get over there and get that AC set down to a comfortable rate. or if the people are leaving. I know some people's like, well, I like my house at 85. Yeah, but I think the person buying the house would probably prefer it around 75, 76. Get that house comfortable so the people don't want to rush through there and get out. Because if they're uncomfortable, if they're too hot, that's going to put a negative memory of that house into their mind and have a less chance of them making an offer. Or their offer is going to reflect, man, all I did was sweat when I was in that house, you know.
Hmm.
So
When
you
when
could
you
see.
come out to a house in Arizona and it's hot out, and that changes in the winter, but in the summer, if you come out and it's hot and you step in, you want to feel refreshed and cool. And walking into a hot house, the house just doesn't look as good.
Mm-mm. And
No.
you want to know that AC
They're
works.
miserable. You don't want to be there. You're not enjoying yourself. You want them to enjoy themselves at the house.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and people worry about, oh, my electric bill. Well, yeah, you might have a higher electric bill for a month, but it's what everybody else has. It's a reality bill, and let them be comfortable because in the seasonal places they may not be there in the summertime, but everybody always asks, well, what's it like here in the summer? What's the electric bill like? Well, here the AC's on, and this is what it feels like in the summertime. And it most of the houses the AC works great, and the bills really don't fluctuate that much unless you keep it like a meat locker where it's frozen.
Mm.
But get it so it's comfortable. Everybody's comfortable. If the listing agent has to go over there and get there an hour or two early before the buyer and the buyer's agent gets there, cool the house down, and then just make sure you communicate with the buyer's agent. Hey, let me know when you guys are done and leave because I'm going to go back and reset the thermostat. And that could be done, and it should be done because the seller's agent and sellers, this is something to think about. Is your agent really working for you? Should be going back into each of these houses after a showing to make sure everything's straightened up, everything's neat, nothing, no lights were left on, no shades were left open, that the house is in presentable condition for the next person that enters the home.
Exactly. Doors were locked. Hmm.
It's also a big consideration in cold climates is heat, and in the summer out here is air conditioning. Well, when I walk into a house and it's nice and cool because the air conditioner's running, I know the air conditioner works, and that's important for a buyer. I mean, that's one of the big expensive systems is the HVAC system, and you want to know that the heat works if you're in a cold area, and that the air conditioning works if you're in a hot area. You want them both to work,
Hmm.
but at that time of year that the house is being shown, um, having it working and working well says a lot to the people. This house is ice cold. It feels great.
Hmm.
Yeah. And the bills are all based off of how cold do you want it. And sellers, make sure you're doing your yearly checkups on all your AC, your heating, and then your water heaters and everything else because that's the first thing people ask. How old is the AC? That this AC might be 10, 12 years old, but here's all the maintenance records. They have it checked out every year. How old is the water heater? Well, the water heater is 10 years old. Most water heaters are into life at 15 or 20. And once they open up and take a look at the water heater, you can see if it has issues. If you see all of a sudden rust rings or calcium buildup somewhere, that water heater may have a little bit of issues. But, a lot of people think about it would be like buying a car and never doing an oil change.
Yeah.
Sellers, you have to do preventative maintenance to your home. It's like my old days when I was younger and never went to a doctor. You don't want to wait until you start gaining age and then go to the doctor and say, "Oh, you should have done this, this, and this." So home ownership is a huge, huge thing. No, don't neglect it. Make sure you're keeping everything up to date so you can answer the questions that we ask you about the home.
And those
Yep.
maintenance, oh,
I'm
sorry,
sorry. Go
Jerry.
ahead.
That adds value to your home, to the list price. I mean, it makes it more justifiable if it's a little higher than the market or what have you. If it's a well loved home, people are going to appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah, they like that. They want to see that the house has been taken care of because it's like you say, Ravine, it's two scenarios. Well, if they didn't take care of all this stuff, what else did they take care of that's going to break down?
Mhm.
This house wasn't poorly maintained, and so it's very important, sellers, to make sure you have your house maintained. And if you don't know what to do, call us. We'll tell you. Have you done this, this, and this? Do you need to know who to call? We'll direct you to some of the people that handle all those different services. Because the worst time to find out about how neglected your house was is a home inspection when you have it in escrow.
Yeah.
And then the buyers are asking for you to fix everything you neglected over the last 15 years.
Yeah, and there's I've seen many cases where you're looking at you're surfing the web and you find the most beautiful house out there, right? And the pictures are amazing, and it's been updated and everything else. And you get there, yeah, it was updated a couple of years ago, but it's been neglected ever since. And that shows to the buyer, that shows it, the condition just doesn't feel good, where you could go to one that you didn't have high on your list because it didn't look amazing in the pictures, and then you get there and you go, wow, this house is so clean. Yeah, it's not updated, but you can really tell that they took amazing care of this place. And that sells, buyers, that does sell buyers. That cleanliness of a house, it's important to keep it clean during the course of a listing.
It
Yeah, that
really.
pride of ownership.
Mhm. Yep. And I've seen here in Quartzsite older homes sell if they're remodeled, updated. Older homes sell faster than even new neglected homes. A 2020 home, or yeah, that's a good year, um, that was neglected, and you got a 1980 mobile home that was not. It was very well loved and updated, and you can just see that they took pride in their home, will sell before the 2020. So
Yeah.
sometimes year doesn't matter if the home has been neglected or well loved. Just a,
Yeah, and that's going away. I mean, everybody always jokes about, yeah, that 1945 home in Los Angeles sold for 2.4 million. And I tell everybody nowadays, because there's so much that you can do with updating, remodel. You can get your house effective age rescored with the county when you start changing out plumbing and doing a lot of different work. And you know what? Nothing beats curb appeal, manicured landscaping. You pull up to a house. A lot of times, an older home looks a lot nicer from the street than a brand new home that's been freshly planted.
mhm.
And so that's one of the things to think about, that I think is probably the number one thing. That you see the pictures on the internet, you take a look, but number one, 99% of the time, people judge the home from the curb appeal appearance before they even get out. They take a look and see, this house is meticulous on the outside. I have a feeling I know what I'm going to find on the inside, because more people spend more time on the inside, so they have more time to keep that house meticulous on the inside. So if you pull up to one that's just beautiful on the outside, that's a win-win all day long when selling a house.
Yep,
Yep.
good point. So,
Well, is that
Yeah.
it? Do we have anything else we want to
No,
talk about
I
based on this?
think we're getting down to that point to where we can, beat this one all day long. But it's sellers. It's very simple. Hire a professional. Listen to the professionals. They want as much as they can get out of it too. They're going to work with you. Um, Selling agents, do the walk around with your sellers. Pretend like you're a buyer. Like I say, I do with mine. I take mine outside. We do the walk together. We do the walk on the inside. And selling agents, tell the truth. Sometimes you say, well, I didn't want to hurt the guy's feeling because that place was a dump. They need to know about it. You can say it nicely, but it's part of our job to say, look, at this price that you want to get, this really, and I'm not saying repaint the house, remodel the kitchens, redo this. Just make sure the price matches the home,
mhm.
the condition of the home.
Yep. I want to put this out there a little bit to the viewers, as if you have any ideas of topics that you want to hear about, we have some ideas of things that we've got coming up. But if anybody has anything specifically that they would like us to talk about, post it in the comments, let us know, and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah,
All right.
join us next week as we continue to bring you more valuable real estate content. And if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and comment.
And tell a friend.
And tell a friend, yes, and join
Yep.
us. Thank
All right. We'll talk to you guys all soon. Thank you.